Buenas noches, mi gente. Bienvenidos. Welcome. Welcome to Thursday. That's a word that has recently taken on a new valence for me. Because there's a poet in the room whose book is called Last Thursday, the Boy Found His Own Body in a Nearby River. It's baller, right? Yes, so tonight, assembled for what will prove to be a beautiful and powerful reading and performance. First will be Mónica Jiménez. Then Stella Corso. Then we'll have a customary intermission. We'll do a little fancying up of the stage, and then Andrea Abi-Karam plus some guests. And then our own Valerie Schoen will conclude the evening. Valerie will be introduced by Bo Huang. Stella Corso will be introduced by Jason Lapellis. Andrea Abi-Karam will be introduced by Ben Claus. It'll be my honor to introduce Mónica to you. And before we begin, I wanted to read a bit from a poem entitled Prologue for Now, Gaza, by the Canadian poet Dion Brand. And I'm going to make something of a sortie and selection from it. The inconceivable decibels of all the things we've lived before. We've been advised of the quotas of casualty. This time, but of all the things I lost when I lost hearing, was the sound of human animals. You will note that human animals has entered into the parlance of the now by way of the Israeli Defense Minister Gallant in announcing the absolute siege and attack on Gaza as a war against human animals. How did you come to be human animals? They asked. We were bored, I told them. The regulators and the fascists along each perpendicular with the least time on earth to live signed off on the old fantasies at press conferences. The editors printed their carnage again like welcome news. And I was in a ship again with none of my belongings except my throat. The situation is always devastating. And armed, immortal fence along the borders stretch out into all the seas. This is for the human animals, the new features and the revenues of disappearing, traveling by bombardment, fleeing by oil and gas concessions. No one can defend us. No one did. Some of us are meat, like human animals, retrospectively eliminated. I'm too soft on human animals. I know generally shouldn't mourn human animals. There was always the silence of the evacuations, 1.1 million stretched along the highway. What should I accept? And what should I grieve in the consumer price data, limping along? The funds predict that growth will slow to 0.7%. What growth atrophies the mind and the fingertips singing all the declarations against the human animals? Remember, some of us know this even longer. We left our coffee behind and the clothes in the dryer, measured but only briefly. Who could look up for long? The contrails to the genocidaire tourism, and the politicians embrace this and authorize this old wonder of the world, the newest color of the grimmest pink. I've taken this inventory before for all the human animals. Liberal democracy has entirely failed, and failed to even hide its fascisms. This narrow path of language has led me here. This is produced in an anthology by Jewish Currents entitled After October 7. I highly recommend the book to you. And now we shall. Hear the poetry of Mónica Jiménez. Mónica Alexandra Jiménez was born in Ponce, Puerto Rico, and raised in Houston, Texas. Mónica is the author of Afterlives of Smoke, which was long listed for the Frontier Poetry Chapbook Contest. She is the recipient of a Career Enhancement Fellowship from the Institute for Citizens and Scholars, formerly the Woodrow Wilson Foundation, as well as fellowships from the Ford Foundation, the Puerto Rican Studies Association, the Institute for Global Law and Policy at Harvard Law School, and the Summer Institute for Tenure and Professional Advancement at Duke. In 2021, she was named an inaugural Letras Boricuas Fellow from the Flamboyan Foundation. Mónica currently lives in Austin, Texas, and is an assistant professor of African and African diaspora studies at the University of Texas at Austin, which is to say she is in it. Lawyer, historian, and poet, triple threat, Mónica is a thinker and artist whose work exceeds disciplinary bounds, synthesizing practices into incisive scholarship, into the ongoing colonial domination of Puerto Rico by the US. Her monograph, Making Never Never Land, Race and Law in the Creation of Puerto Rico, demonstrates how the law as a key apparatus in the logic of racialization, particularly as an exclusionary dynamic in her study of specific Puerto Rico as a colony or unincorporated territory. Mónica's work participates in the developing body of work and analysis at the intersection of history, critical theory, political science, and legal theory that focuses on showing how the definitions within the law itself are weaponized against, in the USA context, Native Americans, African Americans, and the inhabitants of insular territories. Lawfare is the terrifying portmanteau that names this form of state violence. As Mónica writes in the poem American State of Exception, law functions to eliminate entire categories of citizens that do not exist and so cannot be integrated into the political system. Those who may live or must die, whose lives must be subjugated to the power of death. The poems in the Afterlives of Smoke also reckon with the grief, both personal and beyond that frame, that persons subject to this nearly unrelenting lawfare experience. I have survived from afar. Horribly, she writes in Symptoms of Lunacy. There is more to say in this vein, but the grief is close, and the story the poet's own to tell. In Vico's New Science is clear about the material fact within history that the made and the true are one, that history itself may be nothing but this process of making. Thus, the oppressive scripts of racism and colonialist logics cannot be overcome by arguments or appeals to some truer accounting of reality. Rather, they must be unmade, struck through, eclipsed, and overwritten by material forms of emancipation, so that revolutionary forms of life, if they are to be true, They must be made, invented, forged. Monica, whether working and thinking as a scholar, attorney, teacher, or poet, or friend, or activist, is brilliant, caring, and committed to the project of human flourishing and liberation. I'm very happy she's here tonight. Please join me in welcoming her to Naropa.
Hello, good evening, everyone, for the shorties. Jeffrey, that was beautiful, so moving, and sometimes I'm like, wow, I do all that? Amazing, I'm so cool, I didn't know. So thank you for that amazing and beautiful introduction. And thank you for inviting me to be here tonight and to read and share my work with all of you. I've heard beautiful things about this space for several years now, so it's a joy to be here with everyone and to meet so many beautiful people. So I'm going to read a few poems and then a little bit actually of the introduction of my book, which, as Jeffrey explained, talks about specifically Puerto Rico, where I'm from, and one of my greatest obsessions in life, right? And we write our obsessions, and that is perhaps my biggest obsession. So this first poem, Quebradas. I call you back from the edge of death, through a lens of ferns, from my memory, laughing, my grief, to this jungle, to this ground made strange absence, where water cuts our way, cuts your elusive breath. Here, among dripping palms, alive, you alive, and we claim this land, barefoot, tripping on mossy stones, steam-tumbled pebbles, freshwater shrimp, crabs, their tank-like bodies, blue, gray, offering protection, sleep, impossible rest. The heavy weight of air and water melts even the birds, singing through their canopy of green. Impossible green, pulsing green, thick and vibrating against every breathing surface. A veil alive, fecund embrace of light, gray light, green light, water-borne light, raining through fern and frond, steaming upstream and rock. Fugitive elephant ears beckon, yautía cimarrona, marooned maroon fleeing, hidden, invisible amid unburdened fauna. The two faces of verdant yagruma, a poor man's umbrella. One gazes upward as if seeking flight, escape, restless wandering. The other stares stiffly to earth. Here, in this vision, our burden, our brief bodies, difficult and searching, to be clean, unburdened, unfiltered. Here, I call you back. Thank you. So I'm going to read a little bit from the book, which is a sort of poetry. And then I'll finish with a short poem. And again, Puerto Rico, colonialism, how to survive in ongoing colonialism, in ongoing atrocity are the things that obsess me, have obsessed me for so long. The stuffed bear my father gave me when he left Puerto Rico was pink. It wore flowered pajamas and an old-fashioned sleeping cap and had droopy plastic eyes. I clung to it as I watched his plane take off from Luis Muñoz Marin Airport. Mi papa, I cried inconsolably as my older brothers rolled their eyes at my drama. The memory is hazy, though I've heard this story often over the years. I remember the feeling of my father's departure and my sadness, though I cannot recall the sequence of events immediately before or after. But in my mind, I can still clearly see the bear's face and his sleepy pink eyes. My family left Puerto Rico in the mid-1980s. Unlike previous waves of Puerto Ricans who had made their way to the east coast of the United States or Midwestern cities such as Chicago, we were part of a first wave of Puerto Ricans who moved to Houston, Texas, in pursuit of opportunities in the oil and gas industry. This group came mostly from southern Caribbean cities and towns, Ponce, Guanica, Guayanilla, Yauco, Peñuelas, where previously there had been employed by the small petrochemical industry that had grown up and flourished there in the preceding 30 or so years. My father worked for Union Carbide in Puerto Rico for 13 years before being laid off as the company wound down its operations in the archipelago. Union Carbide, Phillips Puerto Rico, Caribbean Gulf, and several other petrochemical companies shut down their Puerto Rico subsidiaries as the incentives and financial benefits that had initially drawn them to the archipelago began to expire. For several decades, it had been profitable for the companies to settle in Puerto Rico, hire cheap Puerto Rican labor, and avail themselves of the multiple tax breaks available to them there. However, by the mid-1980s, as those tax breaks expired, it became more profitable for these companies to move to other overseas locations rather than remain in Puerto Rico. So, they decamped to other parts of the global south, leaving their storage tanks, chimneys, and other industrial rubble to rust and decay in the picturesque tropical landscape of Guayanilla Bay. My father's departure was the first step in my family's tiered migration from Puerto Rico. When he arrived in Houston, he stayed with friends who had once been our across-the-streets neighbors in our neighborhood in Ponce. My father threw himself into finding work, purchasing a used car to drive and to and from interviews. And though Houston of the mid-1980s was experiencing a recession brought on by the collapse of global oil prices, my father was able to use his knowledge of the industry and his hustle to find work fairly quickly. After a few weeks, he rented an apartment and furnished it with inexpensive secondhand furniture. A few months after his arrival in Houston, he was ready for the next phase of our move. My mother, my brother Jermaine, and I boarded a plane, leaving my two oldest brothers, Julio and Axel, both young teens, with an aunt. We left in the evening, arriving in Houston after dark. The city's lights and many highways loomed below us as Jermaine and I fought each other for access to the window. We left Puerto Rico in the spring, close to the Easter holiday. I know this because there were pastel-colored candies and treats awaiting Jermaine and I in the apartment when we arrived. My older brothers arrived a couple of months later after finishing the school year. By then, we had moved into a slightly bigger apartment where Jermaine and I shared one bedroom and Axel and Julio another. My parents purchased my older brothers a small stereo system and a handful of popular cassettes as a welcome gift. And it is the image of Madonna's Like a Virgin cassette with its black and white cover photo that lingers in my memories of my brother's arrival in Houston. My aunt tells me that the move to Houston changed me. Whereas once I had been a gregarious and extroverted kid who loved to perform and sought attention wherever I could get it, after the move, I became shy and reserved. I was afraid to speak to people or to ask questions or request help in stores. Though I learned English quickly, my voice in this new language was smaller, timid, and less sure than my previous voice, my first voice. Today, my partner tells me that when I speak in Spanish to friends and family, I am louder and more animated than I am in English, that I'm a different person when I am home in Puerto Rico, a more excited and brighter version of myself. My family's migration story is not exceptional. It is the story of thousands of Puerto Ricans who left before us and the thousands who have followed. It is a story that has repeated itself for more than a century and continues to repeat itself daily. This story, the one where Puerto Ricans feel forced to depart from their homes and loved ones in order to seek employment and greater financial security, the one where they arrive in hostile cities and towns and experience racism and discrimination, the one where they become a part of what we now call our diaspora, is a product of a long history of colonialism. It is the story, or rather, the repeating nature of this experience, indeed, the repeating nature of Puerto Rico's colonial history, that drives my work. And I'll stop there and say that it drives my scholarly work, as well as my poetry, as well as, in some ways, my life, my conversations, my friendships, my activism, my commitments. And so I'll read two more poems, and then I'll step off the stage, and we will listen to other amazing poets read. This next poem is called Theft. A nightly spell of sleep falls heavy on the sea. Blue whales undulate their slow song, while soft-bellied mollusks are carried down sandways like a wound. These swaying underwater breezes, this gentle flotsam of an oceanic dream, are all for me, querida, a keepsake of my savage grief. Artifacts of deaths that no one died, ashes brimming with unnamed souls. I hate this disconnected dream, this crystalline suburbia, this history without light. You are the machine I make and remake in my sleep. We could not save each other or ourselves in this forgetfulness. Yet in the making, we disappeared into sound dressed in gray, where they said our hearts lived, where the sword decides and Foucault lectures to the ghosts of crows about sex and the biopolitic. And what of colonialism, they squawk? Y queda el negro atado. The sea distanced itself and sang of its guilty blood, of the bodies consumed in its salty leather. Forgive these ravenous waves for demanding sacrifice, a buffet of flesh and fat spread thick and fragrant. Pain is a difficult animal to domesticate. Thank you. And I'll close with a very short little poem that I wrote 2 years ago now after the Uvalde shootings in Texas, when I, like many other parents, were overwrought and unsure of what to do. And so this is actually inspired by a poem by Adrienne Rich, and it's called Power. I am searching for a tonic, for living on this earth, or a cure for melancholy, for fever, winter, reality, man, or for power to say no more. No, I will bear no more. Thank you so much.
Hello, I'm Jason. Lovely to see you all here. I have the distinct privilege of introducing Stella Corso. Stella Corso is the author of Green Knife, Rescue Press 2023, and Tantrum, Rescue Press 2017, along with chapbooks Taboo Vivant, Blush 2022, and Wind in the Auger, Sixth Finch 2021. She's a founding member of the Connecticut River Valley Poets Theater and the associate editor of Denver Quarterly. Stella begins her newest book, Green Knife, with 2 epigraphs, one by Pablo Neruda, translated by Robert Bly. It would be great to go through the streets with a green knife, letting out yells until I died of the cold. This line from Neruda's poem, Walking Around, encapsulates the grave sassiness of Stella's speaker. No one dies in Neruda's line, but there is the appearance of violence, not with a silver knife that might convey actual malice, but a near prop, a green knife. In Stella's voice, there's a bloodless cutting that shimmers like the edge of the green play knife. Even the offhandedness of the beginning of Neruda's line, it would be great, feels particularly in line with Stella's project, a woman on the street, in the museum, at a party, making frank pronouncements that resonate through the whole city and in the reader's mind for days. These are not always clear pronouncements, but can be sharply garbled. The second epigraph speaks to this complexity. Stella includes a line from the introduction to Paris Spleen by Charles Baudelaire, translated by Louise Verez, describing the breaking down of a torturous fantasy into segments to please and amuse you. The epigraph ends with a whole serpent dedicated to you. Stella's segments are broken up, but are also presented to you complete, wriggling, and deceitful. Her words always twisting into something more surprising than you expected. When we talk of the whole serpent in Stella's poetry, we also talk about the incredible inflections of tone that shift throughout, from nonchalance to bitter approval to willing lover. Within her observations are layers of depth that call on artistic and poetic ancestors. For example, the speaker buys a soda. In front of the register, a row of orange crush in the cooler, a bunch of grape crushes made cool. Can something crushed be plural? With the cool of the grape crushes, perhaps she references here Gwendolyn Brooks's poem, We Real Cool, and most certainly Muriel Rukeyser's poem, Ballad of Orange and Grape, where a man in East Harlem pours the grape soda into the container marked for the orange soda, and vice versa. Rukeyser writes of the sodas going in the wrong container and compares the grape and orange sodas to other binaries. It could be white and black, women and men, It could be war and peace or any binary system, she writes. The binary in Rukeyser's eyes is not to be trusted. She suggests that these definitions are invented. Stella buries us all in the heart of her poem's few lines and adds a new twist to the story. These are not just orange and grape sodas, but crushes. The word crush brings to mind both the invisible erotic and the stark presence of death. Finally, Stella asks, without a question mark, can something crushed be plural? In this line, Stella holds Rukeyser's skepticism of the binary, but makes it new. The plurality is just a daily part of the speaker's life. She does not make it plain like Rukeyser. Instead, she allows the reader to find the plurality for herself. In this way, Stella's poetry is incredibly, stealthily generous. She gives us time to find our own conclusions of plurality, and perhaps she gives us space to find this plurality's relationship to contemporary queerness. In her work, I feel more queer. And what's better than that? When seen through Stella's brain out through her words, when seen through Stella's brain out through her words, I feel the crush. Please join me in welcoming Stella Corsa.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Jeffrey and Anne, for having me again, and happy 50th birthday to SWP. I love being here. I'm going to read from well, I guess you would call it serial. I keep wanting to call it a chronic epistolary, because I like how that suggests maybe something more pathological. And there aren't any salutations, but it is meant to be the speaker is meant to direct it toward the same recipient throughout. You and I are like two stories, arm in arm, something about discarded origins. Imagine if shame were not our birthrights and only a poor invention. Still, at times like these, I would like to be rewarded for my suffering. Tossing a ball back and forth is really the saddest thing, don't you think? Everyone looking for a closeness that hasn't been earned. The false feeling of being held in by a pair of stockings. The wedding was gross. Poor kids dressed like homing pigeons. More power to them, the babies. And then there's you who exist so firmly within the framework of your family. It is like you're having two separate experiences simultaneously. I picture you in your tiny striped shirt, smoking with the crow, after having found you camped out under the table, the one with all the spoons. But I'll not be the one to grovel at your feet. You're going to need someone someday to hold all your flowers. Tears this morning, a few. The loons sound like screaming teenagers, so many sirens. I dreamt I was in a hostage situation like an elevator shaft or a small messy room with a few strangers. One woman who was older and frail suddenly fainted, and then the man from the acupressure YouTube video I watched the night before decided it would be best to put her out of her misery, and she would hold us back from our own survival. So he decides it would be the most compassionate thing to do, and since we can't afford a weak link on our island, he decides to kill her with a hammer. And I yell, no, it is cruel, and besides, she's not dead yet, and I know I may get caught one day and charged as an accomplice when they find her body. I say to the man, your fingerprints are all over the glass of the door in this room we are in. And just then the woman comes to, right before his hammer comes down. I can't help but wonder what my cervix is trying to tell me. And then this spontaneous parade that erupted, which I took to be nationalistic and really quite tacky. I fell into step with a gaggle of teens, our bodies moving together in an amorphous blob is how I would paint it. P.S. He drew me a smile on the mirror with a benign arm, but his eyes were full of a type of thunder I don't care for anymore. So I wake again to eat the acid of the day, remembering my connection to the earth when my favorite thing to do was pull those little radishes out of the ground by their hair. It gave me calloused hands, and I liked that, being in the world and also missing it. But fantasy is a thankless job. The river is disgusting. My mother was not wrong. The sun on my back in the wind as unrelenting as I remembered. Stringing up bunnies, wrestling the pig, that is what men do. And finding drained eggs full of glitter, children cracking them on each other's heads, cradling the bunnies. In an ideal country setting. I didn't hear a loon today calling. I went out toward the chasm instead and stood dizzy over it. P.S. I could never imagine myself the bride, was touching myself all night. What to even write about these days? How to stay in company with others when it's others that plague me. I felt I needed more room in my living situation. I was in a big house, but my personal space was small. Can I even estimate the depths of my own filth? It hardly even occurred to me. Can she do it? She must. I think I doubt myself the most sitting here thinking about my phone. Something is always calling. I thought I had drawn him successfully into my web, another creature smashed below on the asphalt. But he didn't like my big words. And what's worse, I passed one on, a dirty word. Poor loons whose bones make them too dense to walk on land. I hate it when I am at odds with my body. Would that I could be a hologram. What are you doing? I said to the boot I thought was a cat. Come to me anyway. Your tragic flaw, A, is that you are tragic. I hesitate to explain this. Dull brain, sallow energy, weak courage, sad heart. But are not others just like us? And if I can still like you, then I can like myself, our two images intertwined. If I mix your pain with my pain, what do we get? I can't stop dreaming of your hair. I could manage, but once you manage, it becomes your life. I may have to skip the lake this year, A. It's a lot to swing right now. Everything here is female except the beer. The sky and lake wearing matching silver coats. I watched a flock of real geese descend upon a flock of plastic lawn geese as if from warring factions. How can I stay here? It makes no sense. I dreamt of the desire to vomit and understood the useless suicide, mindless consumption. When the sun comes up, how easily our priorities change, how changeable our experience, predictable but new, how eager we are to declothe, peel away the material. A neighbor is now approachable, a different meal preferred, something old is noticed. A flaw is hidden for so long and then doesn't seem worth it. What was gross has become benign. We forget what we are meant to be doing and then suddenly remember. Legend has it that if a woman sees a robin fly overhead on Valentine's Day, she will marry a sailor. A sparrow means she will marry a poor man and be happy. A goldfinch means she will marry a wealthy man. I had a dream a dog dragged itself down the street and then a black and blue snake emerged from the house, so I lay down to play dead and I even opened my legs for it, but it bit me in the neck anyway. So I talk about you. I talk about you when I am talking about me. I am listening to the cutest game of call and response from some foreign birds, very lovely and exacting. Looking for some field to lie down in, have a smoke, take a nap. I have a conflicted view about photography. It feels a bit like stealing from what is already visible. If two people come upon a beautiful tree, for example, they may end up with slightly different images, and maybe one is more interesting. Still, they had the same idea, so it wasn't an original idea. Do I have a beautiful brain? And when people see me, do you think they see my inner or outer age? I'm looking for the clues in you. But why use words when we have hands, a mouth, some eyes? Before there were cameras, there were mirrors, and before that, spies and shadows. My work utilizes lo-fi materials to exploit and pervert our view of what is polished and marketable material. I think my haircut is somewhat original, and when I hung my hair over the piano, I think that was an original idea. Still, I'm having trouble with my poetic voice. I think it's those early ego wounds, not wanting to share my man with anyone and sitting at my desk trying to write and make words while my man was in the bathroom doing his hair. I guess I was always very lonely. And the friends I chose were always mean. Of course, I did find many friends later that were nice, but I never tried very hard to stay in touch. How could I? The burden of working, hiding, thinking, and whatever little energy is left. But I'm worried about you, A, going off to the next country by yourself. The people there would make me sad because they are all people I am not, so many possible versions. P.S. You indignant little monster. I read your last letter backwards and liked it better. P.P.S. Should I ask for favors from people I don't really like? These mornings are hard wanting to be inside your poem, watching the hungover shadows of my life replay themselves ad nauseum, to have embarrassed myself singing and then not singing when I should have, queens thinking I'm not queen enough. I think I have always been fortifying my heart in anticipation of you. I too would like to do everything I normally do, but while kissing. But why be in a field when you can just dream of the field? Now the woman next to me is engaging in victim speak. I think she does it partly for humor. I don't mean to sound judgy, I'm just trying to be curious about others. Wow, these birds are loud. Perhaps I should have taken the screaming black cat as an omen. I am where you can't reach me. Whose idea was it to perfume stationery? It has the same powdered scent that has been haunting me for months. They're playing Joni Mitchell at the airport, good or bad sign. I want to cry when I think of all the good people who built ways for me to transport my body to other geographies. I did take my Klonopin and 2 whiskey standard. It's so nice someone made this pill so I don't have to feel like I'm dying. People making things for other people, for a better life. This will be the month of things I don't need and what can I afford to lose. When I think of it now, our friendship was actually quite transactional. I felt a little guilty letting her continue to purchase things from me. She looks good, but not in the way that I would like to know her. Men simply don't want to nag. I'll never forget the disgust in his voice when he used that word. He's sick, but only I think in the way the world is sick. I wish you could see me now, straightened hair and floral dress, like a madame at a real speakeasy. I met a woman today who claims to speak to animals, and would you believe they are largely against the welfare state? But an animal that shivers, she says, does so because it is in great pain. And that man with the cup of hot milk, why was he crying? Now I really am crying. Sitting here, rocking back and forth, waiting for an explosion, or for some inner peace to find its way out of me. It is so small and crisp, and yet I cannot finish this apple. I sensed a mother's smile. I sensed something in his eye hole. I didn't need it, but he was entering retirement and wanted to perform the last experiment. Maybe it's because I rubbed my belly with spices, sitting in the throne of myself. I love you selfishly, in part because you are beautiful. The 5-day work week is institutionalized psychic torture. By the 5th day, you're too soft and weak to consider other options. Because I like the expansiveness of a day without any commitments whatsoever. Also, looking good can be fun and relaxing in its own right. God, my body, my art. That could really fill a day, a whole life even. Not slaving for money, not having to fake anything. To think we even have to conquer the most necessary unconscious thing, that is breath. Conquer, of course, being the wrong word, and semantics are everything. Once you step on a trope, it is no longer a trap. Please don't call. Of course I wanted too much. I wanted to be somewhere ancient or else very new. I felt calm in the damply lit kitchen, pouring coffee, and for a moment I thought I could stay. My view from the back room, trash impaled on a wire fence. I come from a poor village of poets and killers, very famous both. You will be happy, you will not be surprised to know. Every day recommitting to this interior, inferior life, always wanting more, but always needing less. I think an attitude can really shape a body. I'd like to keep my figure. I'd like to keep my sense of wonder. I don't think I'm going to become a writer after all. I spend too much time feeling sorry for myself. I signed up for a workshop today just to learn how to scream. My animus is still trying to kill my anima with a hammer, induce a dark word and you die. But my pain is so boring, still I sleep with curled fist. I squeezed a grapefruit this morning and smoke came out of it. Am I a witch? There is a child in this house, a noise I hadn't planned for. I still can't eat, but I slept well for once in a stranger's bed, although it was otherwise unoccupied. My goddamn hands smell like death flowers. You little bitch, you better be missing me. This morning a bird whistled as I got undressed, and it was only then that I noticed the crack in the wall. My cardinal substance is seeing awareness or observing with the direct eye, but I have been misheld. I get sick of reading my own handwriting. It is a bit psychotic, no? I trust myself to decode my own language, but often cannot. Everything feels so stiff and brittle. I have always dreamt of pools since I was a child, pools and kittens. Even as a child, censoring the dangerous eroticism of women's bodies. Anais Nin rouging her labia. I hadn't felt a tug of pleasure in a while, and now it's back. A lady's ass in the park is touching on every passerby. I have stopped cultivating my own good ass. It wasn't born for stardom, but it does respond well to small improvements. I had a dream you affixed yourself to something wooden, and it had to be removed in a scarring manner, where you took your ache and made it mine. Someone said she is her own woman and made the sign of the cross. There were watermelons smashed open all over the floor. A man asked me today if I was pregnant. I said I am not with child, I'm with geometry. What is the word for being full of babies on a spirit level? Your real self crouching very small inside of you. Thanks.
Okay, bueno. One more round of applause for Stella and Monica both. Let's come back at 8:10. Home, 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 home. This is in quotation marks. Home, 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 home. 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 Home, home, home. Benjamin.
Like the most legendary queers, I first heard about Andrea Abi Karam through hot gossip. There were rumors about their workshop at SWP 2022. Apparently, Andrea signed the class to write letters to their crushes, telling them they wouldn't have to read them, then asked students to raise their hand if their crush was in the room, and then they insisted each student read those letters aloud. Why do I bring this rumor to the mic? In addition to my deep commitment to a poetics of spilling the tea, I think that this anecdote illuminates a detail about Andrea's poetry and way of being, the immense putting up of stakes and their subsequent reinvestment. It is somewhat obvious that for those of us who do not conform to gender's hallucinations, our bodies are quite literally on the line every time we make ourselves public. What is less obvious and more tremendous is the doubling down that occurs, this wild punk instinct to give everything one has to fight back. I ask questions like how to weaponize my own body or what's left. Whether they are knifing the US military's ongoing murderous rampage with language, as in their book Extra Transmission by Kelsey Street Press, or literally stapling their body to break through and make visible the physical limitations of death, Andrea teaches me, provokes me, to throw my own body into the arena, because my body is already in the arena. They find even more ways of tripling our ammunition against scumbaggery by extending their poetics into their way of being in community, even as far as their newest endeavors into medicine. Quote, because what would the Fanonian poem even be? It wouldn't even be a poem or a phrase or a piece of art in the middle of the street. It would just be fire itself. This week, I felt so dumb lucky to be in Andrea's workshop, in which they've encouraged me to trace my artistic lineage, write more directly about the people in my life, and spend some slow time inside of this festival whirlwind to carefully consider the role of a poet in the time of genocide. I am honored to trace the newest ripples in my poetics to Andrea, as I know so many of us here are. Tonight, I sit in full attention to Cyborg, patron saint of killing bros. I will worry about the bruises later.
Thank you so much, Ben. That was incredible. I'm, feeling very emotional, so thank you. And it's been a pleasure to have you in my workshop and along with everyone else this week. And thank you, Jeffrey and Anne and the Pat crew and Swanee and everyone who makes SWP happen. I love SWP so much, and it's a real honor and pleasure to get to be here. So tonight I'm going to present a performance in collaboration with Maura Modea and Bo Wang. And I've been finding it very difficult to write poetry since this current iteration of the genocide in Palestine began. And I've been returning a lot to my first book, Extra Transmission, which was published in 2019, and it's about the war on terror, but a lot of the themes in that book are ringing true again and again and again. So we're gonna perform. I'll give a content warning. I'll just give a content warning. If you need to leave, please leave. And we're going to perform here. And if you can't see, I invite you to stand up and come closer or shift your chair or whatever you need to do if you want to see more or less. And thank you so much for this opportunity. I used to work in a lab with rats for a long time, a memory lab. We were trying to figure out what part of their tiny brains could remember how to navigate space, what told them which way to go. A model for humans, a model for curing Alzheimer's, a model for navigation, a model for humanless navigation, a model for drones. I quit shortly after the lab got funding from the U.S. Department of Defense. Did you know that if you're a combat veteran with PTSD, you can get a nonprofit that is funded by the CIA to give you a dog? I want a dog. On the surface of the signature injury. On the surface. Circle one option below. Mild, moderate, severe. In the framework of it all, the female body in combat reads differently, computes differently, glitches differently, that the female body in combat is not a state of on opposed to off, it's a state of always on, always watching, waiting for the moment of the signature injury, whatever it might be. It costs so much to maintain the body in constant combat. It must consume and consume and consume just to stay awake before it burns it all away too fast. She gnaws at her own fingernails to stay awake, to stay alert, to stay warm. Easy to get cold out there in the desert at night. Hard to maintain the skin sealed to the bones below, to the meat beneath, against each blast and every impact. The environment tries to pull it apart, make little entrances for itself, ports to communicate information back to the base, shuttle information back up the chain of command, ports to communicate information, ports to channel energy into the surroundings. Static shoots across the dry desert air. As if it's not enough to just exist in constant combat, command wants the full download, the full extra transmission she's tried so hard to keep sewn strictly in, direct line to read each electric impulse each time a muscle moves, brace, unbrace, skin just a shell, plastic sheeting to keep the muscle moist, a case for your new iPhone X, release innermost secrets through your fingertips, eyes, just a mirror, a high-resolution scan of the surroundings, breaks in vision noted, breaks in brush noted, lack of cover noted, body just a case for desirable information until they get a new shipment in of those who must volunteer their own skin cases to protect the TV set stationed in your living room, to enter combat, to take orders, to take the fall. Every body is consumable. Every American body is consumable. There's a whole country back home to manufacture more willing bodies for the volunteer-based army, a country that sometimes agrees to relax its borders in exchange for the combat-ready body, for the soft skin that caves in from every bit of shrapnel, for the soft skull that splits on impact, for the soft brain that bounces back and forth inside the skull, for the soft brain that tears and swells, for the soft brain that after the tears and swells still turns the body back on, still serves, for the soft person who can't remember. On the assembly line to American nationalism, little clicks along the conveyor belt. As of 2024, 31 out of 36 hospitals in Gaza have been severely damaged or destroyed. Since October 7th, the WHO has recorded a total of 890 attacks on healthcare facilities, with 443 occurring in Gaza and 447 in the West Bank. The attack on healthcare infrastructure is calculated, colonial, a strategy to maximize death and maiming. Occupiers continually shock healthcare infrastructure into rubble and target surgeons in their sleep. There is a missing of surgeons. Trauma surgeons, 6 to 8 years of training. Plastic and reconstructive surgeons, 6 years of training. There is a missing of. Without them, the antidote to inevitable injury, ambulances, surgeons, medical schools, all instruments of recovery after the blast. How can there be respite from fear? There is a blast. You are thrown into the wall or the roof or the ground. Your body hits the wall or the roof or the ground hard, with force. Flesh tears, bone breaks. Your brain moves back and forth inside your skull like all those really sick drunk driving movies that you have to watch in driver's ed when you're 16. It's like that, except you survive the blast. Get up and catalog the damage. The OR ceiling has caved in. There is rubble inside the open body, laying exposed on the table. Your body survives, but now you have to cope with so many more soft, torn edges. Select a PDA from the moving belt. Slide the PDA all the way into the port. It should not hurt. It should feel comfortable. It should feel natural. There may be initial misfirings. You may see scans of the calendar behind the eyes. They'll feel like dreams. You won't miss any appointments. And remember, it's just a prototype. You will not be satisfied. Head-on collision, double vision. This is not, I forgot my wallet at home during Mercury retrograde. This is not, oh, I forgot you two even dated. Sorry if it's awk now that we're fucking. This is not, I don't remember spraining my ankle because I was wasted, but now it hurts sometimes. This is not textbook PTSD. This is the end of the canon and an attempt to adapt in a world that constantly fails me. This is the end of a person and the beginning of a malfunctioning cyborg, an irreversible detachment from my body, a walking ghost. At what point did you realize there was something very, very wrong? Reroute the connections until they are no longer tense, until they are at rest, until the hips forget what it means to clench when hitting the sidewalk. I want to hold my eyeballs in my hands, wrap them up so no light gets through. That's the best way for what comes next. Take a pair of trauma shears and slip the fingers from your dominant hand through the loops of the handle. Now it's time to turn it off and get cut off from the worldwide view you're connected to. Cut the wires emerging from the back of your eyeball one by one to lessen the shock. Note, be careful not to cut the meaty ones or you will actually be blind. Just cut the latex encased ones. They will feel like wet plastic. Note 2. If you're having difficulty guiding your hands through this process, do it one eyeball at a time and position the resting eyeball at a 90-degree angle to the eyeball getting work done to help your hands navigate from shear to wire. Do the cutting carefully, as the wires have been sitting inside your body your entire life and are very slippery. Don't let the fiber optic wires fool you. You'll know you've done the job right when you suddenly feel the crushing alienation of being cut off from the network. When you no longer feel integrated, your different parts feel at risk of coming apart from the whole. It will be uncomfortable. What you can't see can't hurt you. Do you remember the blast? There are stories of machines that enter bodies, machines that enter armor, pierce the skin, machines that force their way through, machines that force their way through boundaries, through borders, through armored shells, through skin. Just a few scratches and bruises, bump on the head, nothing major, right major, yes major, right, left major, keep moving, keep driving, keep fighting, keep sewing, worry about the bruises later. There is a blast, there is an impact, there is the wall or the roof or the ground, there is a blast, an impact, a force against you, there is the wall, the roof, the ground, the sharp metal edge, there is a blast, and that's it. Signature symptoms of my world: going deaf in one ear, unwanted memories, bleeding under the fingernails, inability to be present, therapy bills, emotional exhaustion, physical exhaustion, dehydration, belief in other nightmares, in other ways to survive. I pull wires out of my skin just below the surface of the screen. I tap on them to make them activate, thicken, awaken. I tap on them in the inside of the elbow, thick material. I take a new razor blade out of the package from the hardware store and make an incision on my forearm, close to the inside of my elbow. I massage it open. I pull the wire out slowly. Do not pull anything else out at this time. The wire is wet from being inside my body. It won't short out. These wires were built for my body. I drop the wire into a clear plastic bucket at my feet, where it rejoins the wires it used to connect with inside my body. Communication exoskeleton. ports on the inside of my wrist that fail to connect, that fail to remember for me. I'm waiting to connect. I need to connect. Without this connection, I am alone. I desire control of the connection from the inside of my wrist to my brain. What gets sent, what gets translated. I pick at the thinner wires that reach out of the tops of my arms. I pull them out quickly, a little resistance, and then the skin lets go. Sometimes the ports on the inside of the wrist throb and ooze, like all the blood rushes to the point of fusion on the inside of the wrist. The blood rushes and the skin swells around it. Will it be rejected? The port rises at an angle, making it difficult to plug in quickly, tap in easily, flick on smoothly. I had heard of there being complications with this kind of body mod, but I never thought it would happen to me, that I would glitch the way they expected. I'm supposed to glitch differently, encounter pulses differently, encounter myself differently. I feel it sometimes, am aware of it, dragging against the inside of my shirt sleeves, the outside of my jeans. Hope it doesn't snag on the little metal teeth I use to read the world outside myself. How to become a new glitch, a new disruption. Grow a new port of internal to external connection, a new point of fusion, not as a systematized control of the pulse, signal, buzz, data package, but as a point of disruption. I can yell at you all I want, but still nobody else knows what's going on. I just need to find my words. Teach me how to remember, how to become a new person. Teach me how to not get lost in the maze. Teach me how to become a new rat. I'm not trying to remember for you or forget with you. I'm just trying to understand how it all works. You have the PDA to remember for you, or maybe that's an iPhone or a tablet. I like saying PDA though. It's more general, not about the make but the function. Your external brain, holding your brain in the palm of your hand, sleek and slim, not wet like the other stuff we've pulled out. Holding your brain in the palm of your hand. I wonder how it feels when you turn it off. It must be nice to turn it off. I look out beyond the glass pasted on my face and I can't see anything that I want. I'm already disconnected, eyes no longer the lens of the worldwide view, just for me, one malfunctioning cyborg among many. It feels important to remember the before. Not everyone can. Of course, I know that. Sometimes I can but don't want to, and sometimes you just can't. I just can't. And sometimes I can and have to not forget the source, not forget the shitty relationship or the shitty cop or all the damn bros, where there was skin before machine and machine before skin. I wonder if it's really up there, all of our memories above us in the electrostatic cloud. I look up sometimes just to try to see it, try to catch a glimpse of purple lightning shooting across from point to point, moment to moment, memory to memory. But you can't hit the download button and have them dropped into the ball of wires in your hand. Wait for them to travel back into your body, back into the places they used to live. I know that. Don't you think I know that? It's too damn late that I lost the download code in the desert. The state gave you the PDA, but it also gave you the injury. Which came first, the injury or the tech? The injury. It's always the injury. What if I need this hand for something else, to stab the cop in the eye with the screwdriver or the bro in the ear with the pen, or to get me off instead of getting me there on time? It's just not coming together. It's just not. On the outside, looking in, it was just a little bit dangerous. Doesn't seem like anything is wrong, but so much is. So much. You told me that already. I know. It's just not going to go away. That's why this feels so necessary. On the outside, looking in, is this what you signed up for? 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 A ghost that would live on and on. I am choosing elements from a source document. I am obsessing over so many things. I am trying to think about body autonomy. I am trying to get off. I am trying to short out. There is a blast. There is an impact. There is the information, the electricity, the shrapnel, the bodies, the feeling. There is the sharp metal edge. There is a blast.
Valerie Schoen, born in the year of the earth snake. She isn't quite of our time. Was it the previous millennium 10 earth snakes ago? For Valerie comes to us in that old clandestine tradition of tricksters, concubines, clairvoyants, figures in the belly of the royal court that straddle the outside of the inside, their inclusion the very basis of exclusion. A misfit turned into a clown to entertain the king, but don't be fooled. A jester will fumble their juggle on command, a kind of mastery that, yes, she made you look. When one's power and maybe one's very existence is a threat to the standing order, but still, you're one child wandering a strange land. One must smuggle one's message inside some lining. This lining is language, but it is also my skin, where Valerie has over the past 2 years imparted her knowledge. We have seen this body of hers crawl into the classroom on all fours. We have seen it yodel and serenade and shudder and cackle with us. There is nothing for us to do but lap at what leaks. We drank the moon water. We collected our own spit. Valerie is the author of 8 books, including The Pedestrian, forthcoming from Nightboat next year, and most recently, The Knife, out of Ugly Duckling Press as of last month. We are all reading The Knife this summer. It is absolutely a beach read, Valerie said, signing someone's book. A thriller beach read, I'd say so myself, where the speaker under duress is continuously mapping out their surroundings, not only to describe the situation, but to discover it by altering it and spinning it, attending to its spin, because that's how to keep a top on its axis. Peering so close into the matter of one's own life, one's own community, so close, nothing looks like it should. What matter are we to believe? Then, like the girl who looks up from the toy top, spinning, up from the asphalt, the girl becomes oracular, primordial and prophetic. I was married to death as a child, she says. From the dirt or a smudge off your cheek, she can call out a fate, and that is a secret we clutch onto. Please welcome Valerie Schoen.
I lost everything that day. The day I went to the well for the 100th time was the day I stopped humming to myself. The only time when I would hum again was when I was humming to a child. I only went to the well because it was the middle of the afternoon and I had no place to be. All of the lovers were supposed to take turns replenishing the tanks, but the day before time had moved forward, so all of the lovers were off kilter. In the middle of the day, they felt like they didn't belong to anything. They would complain about being all messed up in their stomach, but then forget what they were even saying. And because almost all of them felt this way, no one blamed anybody else. Just that one day, nobody accused anybody else of being lazy, even though everyone was finally being lazy and no one had had enough water to drink. Even though it was probably the only day that it really mattered to be drinking enough water. Even though the day was meeting me halfway, which meant I was meeting the day halfway too. I was still kind of being lazy too. When I went to the tank to fill up a pot and saw that it was nearly entirely empty, there was no one around me. Years before, I was somewhere when I would hum no matter where I was going or doing. I like to think that somebody heard me, and a few times someone did and said something to me. The walk to the well didn't take very long at all, but I dragged my fingers along the wall, which left behind twin tracks of what looked like raw ice cream and gasoline. The walls were always falling apart. Parts of it were always being replaced with things that weren't even wall, and someone had painted over half of it. But there were so many other things falling apart that no one ever brought this up. What I ran my fingers along was beside me, like something you never think about, but something you never forget. No one ever woke up. The only time I woke up was when the gold digger's sister banged on all the window bars in the alley with her slipper. I didn't understand any of the words she was shouting. Not because the language we all spoke was very old, which meant one family could be speaking the language and the family across the street wouldn't have any idea what they were saying, but because our family had left the alley for many years and then had come back, except when we came back, we weren't staying, but repaying something back. I smiled at the gold digger's sister, and she showed me something I'll never forget. I always thought that if my family's name would ever be shouted through the alley again, it would be through the mouth of the gold digger's sister. I always thought that if I brought anything back to that alley, the gold digger's sister would take me door to door, telling everyone who and why. How that truck could fit through an alleyway. How she used to make the truck go around her. I don't know. When I had to turn away from the wall, I did. And it must have looked like they just stopped laying down the tracks because everyone started getting lazy, or that I forgot about the truck that played for Elise through the alley. I forgot about everything I left behind. There was no one within earshot, and it was not strange at all. People weren't sitting on the side of the street like I had seen them at so many times. Even after we started wearing shoes, or even after there were more of us in the street wearing shoes than not wearing shoes, people would still sit on the side of the street like there weren't more of us wearing shoes now. When the gold digger got married, she was crying on her wedding day, and her sister had a bruised arm, and no one got up from the side of the street to let her through. The more of us wore shoes, the dirtier and dirtier the street got. But that day, it looked like no one had ever worn shoes or had ever needed to. The street looked so clean, like it had been washed and then sprinkled everywhere with chalk. It wasn't a clean I ever suspected, but one that made me enjoy the amount I was sweating. My mother hadn't died yet, and I loved her, but it wasn't a lie to say that I didn't have one. My father hadn't died either, and I also loved him, but even more, it wasn't a lie to say that I didn't have one. Almost like they had left the alley, I left the dead end. Almost like that. My mother and my father never said their families were dead until they were, because for anyone who came from the alley, that wouldn't have just been lying. It would have meant that you were destined to share a bed with the buffoon. But for me, anytime I said, "Nice to meet you," I didn't know what I was doing. And whoever I said this to knew it wasn't true too. It's not that we had ever met before, but we had already shared so much with each other. If the friend of the friend thought that this visit to the city of dreams would be her comeback, then she was mistaken. Though the friend of the friend was starting to be a rumor herself, though she was becoming somewhat notorious herself, in that friends of the lover's family had heard so much about her, but had for so long never seen her that they began to even doubt her existence. These rumors of her not being real weren't really real. The lover would share the most notorious hotel with the lover's family anytime, whereas the friend of the friend had separated it. When it was actually time for her comeback, nothing would be separate anymore. Everyone, friends and family, would be invited to sit around the courtyard. When it was already too late, everyone would be together. Over the 3 days when the family was together, the friend of the friend's sister had hurt her, the friend of the friend. And she, the sister, had been so kind and loving to her, the friend of the friend. But she had hurt her with the way she spoke about the brother, with every thought she had about the brother. Over the weekend, the sister and the mother were barely on speaking terms. Once again, the friend of the friend stood between them. Over the years, she had come to do that, stand between people. Sometimes she was asked to send a message to someone to suss someone out. Sometimes she was asked to get news from someone about something. When the sister had gone to pick the mother up from the airport, she had gotten out of the car and immediately grabbed the mother's carry-on bag to load it into the trunk. The mother yelled for her to stop. The sister yelled for her to stop. They didn't speak to each other on the way back to the sister's house. Over the weekend, when the mother saw the sister taking baby aspirin, she mumbled, "I never took a single thing during any of my 3 pregnancies. And look how your son turned out." The sister turned. "You always say you had 3 perfect children. Look how your son turned out." The friend of the friend stood between them. "I never said I had 3 perfect children. I said I had 3 perfect pregnancies. You all have 10 toes and 10 fingers, and nothing else is extra or missing. You don't know what you're talking about. This is science." And then the sister said things about the brother that the friend of the friend couldn't even repeat. The sister said things like how she never wanted a child like the friend of the friend's brother. Like how she never wanted a child like the sister's brother, how she never wanted a child like the mother's son. The friend of the friend stood between them. The friend of the friend's sister could sleep anywhere. The sister could sleep standing up. She went to bed earlier than any of them, and she woke up earlier than any of them too. At the comedy show on the second night of the family reunion, everyone except the mother sat in a little corner table in the back. The brother and the new girlfriend on one end, the sister and the husband in the middle, and the friend of the friend and the lover on the other end. The sister was asleep before the end of the first act. The friend of the friend's brother could stay up for days at a time, and then finally he'd sleep and sleep. He'd turn his phone off, and the mother would worry that he had gone missing again, and she'd enlist the help of the friend to get in touch with him, to make sure he hadn't fallen off the deep end again and wound up on the street. In one way, it was a good thing when she finally got through to him, and he said, "I'm sleeping, I'm okay." And in another way, it always hurt her deep down too. They weren't so different, the sister and the brother. Before the end of the second act, when the friend of the friend looked over at the brother, his head was rested on the new girlfriend, his eyes resting too. The new girlfriend was looking dumbly at the comedy show, and the friend of the friend wasn't sure if she was smiling just to be polite, or if she was even understanding any of it. The brother and the sister weren't so different. They weren't so different because neither of them cared if the people on stage said anything to them about their daring to shut one's eyes to someone else's show. But they were different Because while the sister was truly sleeping and slanting down all the way onto the shoulder of the husband before the end of the first act, the brother was gently resting his head on the new girlfriend, resting his eyes. The sister was passed out, sleeping. The brother was there, resting. The friend of the friend had never seen her brother look so calm before. Calm. It made her heavy, thinking about the difference between her sister and her brother, someone sleeping and someone resting, the difference between a hospital, a place where you're meant to get well and soon be discharged from, and a hospice, a place you go to when you're not expected to recover. Hospices were calm, like her brother, resting on this girl's shoulder. She didn't know anything about this girl, but her brother looked as calm as someone a year or two before they die. The friend of the friend watches the enemy. The enemy does not know how to sleep, anymore. Have you ever seen a ghost sleep? A ghost is never at rest. A ghost is always moving, slowly moving. A ghost gets up from a body in bed and then begins walking. A ghost is always beginning. The enemy asked questions, expecting the friend of the friend to ask these same questions back, though not having prepared the answer to them beforehand. The enemy. The friend of the friend spends all day asking herself a question, and then finally, near the end of it, she sees what it can be, and so asks the enemy this as though so waited for a question. It is loud, this machine making ice. Two people who want to love each other wholly, equally, cannot depend on each other entirely, unequally. What the friend of the friend wants is for the enemy to say, I am sorry. What the friend of the friend wants is for the enemy to say, I do not understand. The enemy begins to suffer from cabin fever. Immobilized are they, restless. The friend of the friend begins to fall asleep mid-sentence. The thought of opening another door, of walking any further, insupportable, is it? More and more in the coming days will they both be prone to injury, the enemy and the friend of the friend. Abetting. The enemy would like to know if they said anything funny after the anesthesia began wearing off. The friend of the friend, no. The friend of the friend asks the enemy if you would like to turn your machine off. No. Two of them seem to be waiting. Who will outlast the other? Which one of them will need to leave the room first? Who will need the other first? Two of them seem to be waiting together, warding off together, keeping guard together, when really they ought to just take each other to bed, start fingering each other while this city disappears. It hurts right there, the enemy says, pointing to the hole on their leg. I'm going to bed, says the friend of the friend, who has just crawled out of this hole. The friend of the friend would like to ask the enemy if they know that when they sleep, their mouths are closed. It is time now for the friend of the friend to leave, but she cannot leave this spot. She cannot leave the building. Instead, she goes into the bedroom and catches her breath. The cold food has been out on the balcony in the suitcases for almost 2 days now. The friend of the friend had transferred the most important food from the icebox into the suitcases when the sun was going down the day before the last and brought them out onto the balcony, when the air outside became almost as cold as the air in the box. This will do, she said. Now what? The enemy had asked. The wind has been quiet for several hours now, but the sun is going down again today, and the friend of the friend hangs onto a lantern, and the enemy is an enemy with a headlamp wrapped around their head. Around noon, when everything was still shut off, the temperature was climbing and the sun was moving across the building. The friend of the friend tried to position the outdoor furniture in such a way so that it would provide shade for the suitcases holding the cold food. Is it still good? The enemy had asked, lying against the wall, losing their will, it seemed. The night before, the friend of the friend had been woken up from a dream by the wind. She had arrived in the dream with the lover, but shortly thereafter, the lover would not look at her. The lover would only look at the enemy. The friend of the friend became nothing, and she saw how the lover and the enemy desired each other. Then it was time for the lover and the enemy to take up a room and to undress each other. At the end of the night, in front of a garage that was now closed on a street that was now quiet and empty, the friend of the friend's body. The lover and the enemy strolled up hand in hand in romance, thinking it was some kind of a joke, thinking the friend of friend had a little too much to drink. But there she was, bruised all over. The enemy kicked her to wake up, but the friend of the friend did not breathe. When the lover realized the friend of the friend was dead and not just sleeping, the friend of the friend woke up. Now from the bedroom where the friend of the friend is alone, the lover belongs to the enemy. It was the enemy's idea, not the lover's, to go to the hotel lobby to wait it out, have some power. Everyone there at the hotel carrying on like there was still power for everyone. The telephone symbol beside the restroom symbol, going into the back room to grab their bags when they should have left it to the man whose job it was to grab the bags from the back room. I hear people saying things, the lover had said. Really? What? I don't believe it. It was the lover's idea to come here, although the lover would not have known about the hotel were it not for the enemy. From the bedroom now, the friend of the friend cannot see what she cannot see of the lover. Friend of the friend, the enemy would like you to know that they are ready for you when you are. But the friend of the friend cannot hear this over the machine making all of the ice. Everything must be repeated, and more than once. Though the food in the suitcases on the balcony may be swelling, the leg of the enemy is coming down. I am too friendly when I play this game, she says. Here, have something to eat. Exactly from the bedroom, the friend of the friend cannot forgive the lover for belonging to the enemy. Have you ever seen someone with a tourniquet on their leg screaming at you when they shouldn't be screaming? Screaming moves the blood when they shouldn't be moving their blood. Because from the bedroom, the friend of the friend cannot forgive the lover. She fears that coming into the bedroom alone in the first place makes this all irreversible, because she's left someone else alone now. It doesn't change a thing that both the friend of the friend and the lover ate the fish together the day before the last. It doesn't change anything that she, the friend of the friend, understands. It is a lot of work and time to care for, to be someone's caretaker. There's someone else who can't move either, and it's not the enemy, and it's not the lover. They were willing to get sick to not waste anything. I understand it's a lot of work and time to be someone's caretaker, and I just want to say, she begins, but this is something she has only learned today or yesterday, no, the day before the last, and so she reaches down to remove her socks. It can feel that way. From the bedroom, the friend of the friend is able to better resist the enemy's helplessness. From the bedroom where the friend of the friend is alone. People come out of their bedrooms and the friend of the friend is there, but when the friend of the friend comes out of the bedroom, it's the lover lying there waiting for her to come home. From room to room, ghosts move, and they are never able to settle down. Even in a bedroom, no. The bedroom is the worst place for a ghost to find themselves. The friend of the friend's mother had said, I think he is a ghost. He will move from room to room, and he will never find a home. These people live out of a suitcase no matter where they go. They never come home. Even lying back on a bed, they are preoccupied. I think this is the worst condemnation. Who would dole out such a punishment? The friend of the friend brushes teeth for two, goes down the stairs for two, breathes in fresh air for two, but she is preoccupied right now. In every moment that is passing, she would rather carry around a suitcase than have someone care for her. It is not the enemy distracting her, and it is not everything she loves either. But she has an idea that every day that goes by that she doesn't move the outdoor furniture a few inches left and right, that she'll become one with the infection. Every time she moves the outdoor furniture, she must move it back, at least within a few inches. This is not her distraction. The lover has forgotten about his screaming because every memory is brief when you have blue feet, and the friend of the friend would prefer it that way, right now anyway. Right now, she even finds that for 10 years she had somehow been missing this brevity because, it turns out, she has always been helpless. She has never known how the fresh air could help her. She has never known how going down the stairs could help her. That is the enemy's job. Maybe brushing her teeth. Maybe. The friend of the friend did not know what she was allowed to forget. Screaming has been there for her, but not forgetting. Though soon she will also scream. Your memory is like a flea, she will scream. It will be okay because it will be passing. She didn't realize that she was allowed to go outside whether or not she stopped being distracted. It seemed rather that everyone could only evacuate from the building for her to lie back on the bed in the bedroom with the door closed. Then, what perfect words to scrawl on the wall. They are making arrests now. Her friends are laying out a blanket on a piece of grass. He appears to be totally fine now. What she is saying is she needs to go somewhere with you, meet you somewhere, a city where neither of you live, so that both of you are coming from separate cities and coming together from separate cities, for the two of you to come together from separate cities in a city that neither of you know, in a city that will also disappear soon. Spend several days together in a hotel room, there, together. But it's still so soon after, and we are monitoring it very closely. I am still, as of now, planning to come tonight. The plan is to have a friend come and be with the enemy. But they had no friend, there was no plan, and no one needed to know this. She would be leaving the enemy at home alone by himself with the thermometer. The enemy would be home alone with the thermometer, their friend. I'm so young, she said to herself, the friend of the friend. I am so young. There must be some kind of a mistake. We have to be awake, my friend, awake in the days to come, she heard a friend of a friend saying. When the enemy needs to be brought to the emergency room, that's when the friend of the friend comes out from hiding. I am awake. I have not slept for days. She had felt it there before, when her mother had looked out at the ocean and said, I will drown myself. I will drown. I'm not going home without her. Now she knew. On one side, I thought you hated me. On another, they have no idea the hate inside me. The friend of the friend believes that if you believe you know how long you're going to live, then yes, you will live that long. The friend of the friend believes that if you do not know how long you're going to live, it's like goodbye, goodbye, every single morning. You may hear her goodbye, goodbye, or because she's in the tunnel already, you may have just heard nothing and be. The thing is, you're going through a tunnel too. You're going through a tunnel through her. And when she called you and you didn't answer, it was because they helped her sing you the unchained melody. And as soon as she had come to the last moment of the serenade, like one long breath, time was up, waking up. Even the one who never said anything laughed and looked like a kid you could have hurt. What she is saying is she wants to spend time with you. You've been hiding your easy love. I'm not afraid to be cheap anymore. She was thinking about when she would tell the friends about what happened to the lover. You wouldn't know by looking, she'll say. The day before the last, the lover had said to the friend of the friend that it looked like the lover's friend said, "Tell me how it goes," to the friend of the friend, as though the friend cared, because it were the friend of the friend's lover, not because the lover and the friend were friends. If that is true, then it is because the friend hates themselves. I have not seen your face in years, and even then it was a picture. We were two pictures, though, talking towards each other. Me, lying on my back. You, I don't know. Tell me. The light comes in from all different directions. When it was time, and I could not have planned it, I said, "Hello." It never crossed my mind that I was unforgivably late when I called you my friend indirectly. I can go to the grocery store for you now. This building was not made to be evacuated. When it is empty, only the outdoor furniture is left, and there are no hard feelings. The lover asks the friend of the friend, if he died here, would she still stay here? The last moment of the serenade is ours, but in the middle, or for a moment in time between the beginning and the end, it was hers. Never unforgivable. With friends, you. Thank you.
C'est magnifique. One more round of applause for Valerie, for Andrea, for Bo, for Mara, for Stella, for Mónica. A gracious thank you to our friends, comrades of summer, the PAC crew. We try and hold this space as a space of experimentation and openness because we understand them to be momentary tropes or experiences of liberty. We hope you can see that in and with and among us. We hope you rally to our cause. We hope you return. We think of you. We love you. The rest of the evening is yours.